Um, so, hi everybody who's watching this. My name is Michael, and you will know this from wherever this video is landing, which I'll be working through with my editing skills, which are minimal. I am talking with Jamie, and Jamie is someone that I've been working with for about 6 months now, right?
Yeah, just about, I would
But yeah,
say.
and we started. What the hell is this? This is December 2nd, and we started, I think, in
April.
yeah, April this year. Yeah. Um, and so the reason, so to start this out, I was going to say at the top, Jamie and I are just going to have a conversation. I have seen a lot of these conversations with mentors or people. I call myself a healer and an awakener. I realize how ridiculous that sounds, but it is what this work is about. And Jamie will attest to it better than my ego can. But the reason I wanted Jamie to come on here is Jamie and I, Jamie, I call him Luke. He calls me Obi-Wan. It's a little running gag we have. But Jamie is this is going to be embarrassing for you. So just get ready. Uh,
All right.
Jamie's an amazing person. He's the kind of guy that I wished all clients had this natural proclivity to understand and dive into and challenge. And the reason I wanted us to talk was just to hopefully in this conversation we have. I still think today the idea about talking to someone about your life, asking for advice, feedback, is still considered in some ways to be um, almost not frowned upon, but like, not as necessary as I think that many of us who enjoy conversation want it to be. So I wanted this to demystify that a little bit. Um, Also, this is a conversation. You ask for my advice often, and I give it, but ultimately, this is just a conversation. So, so what are you really scared of? What's your biggest darkest fear? So just like, why did you reach out to me initially?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question just because uh, at the onset, or at least outwardly, it appeared that I, had everything on track, career, personal life, etc. But I think there was certainly a disconnect between what I was presenting externally versus how I really felt internally about that. And just kind of had a series of deep conversations with somebody that and who put us in touch. And
Greg,
exactly. Shout out to Greg. Uh,
Greg, we love Greg.
we do. We love Greg,
Mm.
and just coming from him, who I trust. I know he wouldn't have recommended you if he didn't think you would be able to help me. And then, when we met for that first time, I could tell, that you're the real deal and that, working together would really move my life in the right direction. And, yeah, you've done that and so much more. So yeah, just, that's kind of why I came to you in the first place.
I want to go to the internal external thing. We talk a lot about that, about the internal life, the external life, and that
Yeah.
expression, be in the world, not of the world. But I just got to ask, so you didn't know me and we talked. How did you know I was the real deal? This is not my ego.
Because
I'm just really curious. Like, what said to you, this guy is it?
my, I would say, like, through myriad of life experiences and just growing up, I feel like I have a strong sense of intuition and that I'm a really, really good judge of character. And can definitely see a snake oil salesman when I see one. And
Mm.
yeah, you just presented so differently, and you were raw, and you were. I would say that I can sniff from a mile away when somebody is interacting with me, but is not really present. And you were the most pure form of presence that I could ever have imagined. So that kind of was what. kind of tip me off to you being the real deal.
Snake oil salesman. I say that a lot. I don't know if you're sort of echoing what I say, but I say that a lot.
Hmm.
Um, I think a lot of people in this world, whatever we call this, of helping people, talking, having conversations. I think it's so hard to know what's authentic anymore,
Right.
especially
I
online.
totally
'Cause
agree.
yeah, it feels like we're being sold something, and
Yep.
so we take advice or we make changes in our life based upon what someone's saying, but it never quite feels. So presence, you're right. So recently someone said the thing that I demand of them is presence. And it's funny,
Hmm.
in my life, I'll be in my head all the friggin' time. Like I'll be, but here in session, I'm never anywhere but here.
Hmm.
Um, what is presence to you? Like this work has been about being in a state of presence. What is presence? Because when we met, you were in an apathetic state, if I can be so bold.
Yeah.
You were depressed. You were not feeling good. And I meet a lot of men who are depressed.
Hmm.
Talk about like what presence and then depression. What's the correlation? Is there to you now? Like, do you have thoughts about that? Because you're not apathetic or depressed like you used to be. You feel better. But how does presence and the origin of where depression comes from? What is that? How does that mix with you now? How do you understand it?
Yeah, I feel like presence is this idea that you're not paying any attention to the mind's thoughts and
Hmm.
to what's going on in your head, because you know that's where you focus on, you know you're either clinging to things that happened in the past that you have no control over because they already happened, and then you're either worrying about things that have not yet happened, which then um, you know that you also have no control over, uh, or very little, and so that ends up distracting you from the presence, and removes you from the only thing that you're afforded, which is right now, and it really robs you of that joy. So to me, presence is not paying attention to any of those things and just allowing things, everything in front of you to unfold.
I'm always very annoying when I do this, but it's like you're not focusing. You're not thinking the thoughts. Your mind's thinking the thoughts. So you're separate from the mind.
Yeah. Hmm.
Why do you think we have such a hard time remembering that we're not the mind, but we're the self? And if the idea is to connect to the self in presence, where there's no problem, even though there's all these things to do, the mind generates all these thoughts, which creates a problem. Why do we still identify with the mind?
Because it's very easy to get wrapped up in the mind's panderings, and just you really like get lost within it. Like I feel that over a period of years, like my mind's developed this you know pattern, so to speak, that it's easy to follow, and it's comfortable to a degree. It's in
Well,
many ways
yeah, I was going to say pandering. That's a great word. You know what?
nice.
I think we actually get comfortable in the pain. Like I think we think it's normal. We think that sort of
Yeah.
difficult. We think it's like us, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You and I talk about Groundhog's Day. Talk about Groundhog's Day.
Yeah, where every day feels the same, and you're not really moving the needle in your life one way or the other. Yeah.
A lot of great thinkers always say you have to make a peace with boredom. What do you think about that?
Mm, mm, it's a good question. I don't think boredom is something you have to make peace with. I think you have to make peace, become at peace with, like, the idea of silence. That
Hmm.
you could be alone in the present moment, and uh, you know you could just exist as is. You don't have to create something to do. Like, at least that for me, that's something that has been a bit of a growing process. Just being able to sit still, be still, and observe the world, and not necessarily think of it as this narrative that I'm the main character that needs to do X, Y, and Z. If that makes sense.
Kinda. So we talk a lot about consciousness, right? like being in consciousness, connecting to consciousness, you know?
Yeah,
Um, so are you saying that boredom can be alleviated by sitting in a state of consciousness?
I think so. Yeah.
How does action come into that? Because I always feel like when I'm in a state of consciousness, I'm very antsy. I can be manic. You know, I've got a bit of a thing with me where I'm always trying to get things done sooner than they should. I don't have a lot of patience. I'm not good at
Mm,
that. And I don't want to live that. I want things to be different, new, and exciting all the time.
hmm.
And so, how does being in a state of consciousness, from your experience in this work, how does that presence um, not have us repeat a Groundhog's Day? Like, what does that do? Like, how does that work for you? Like when you're not listening to your mind's thoughts, but you're just here right now. Like everybody says, here right now. Everybody's screaming that at us. So we're here right now.
Yeah.
Is that enough?
I mean, at the base, yes, it should be, but in
The,
practice,
yeah.
yeah, in practice, I really rarely find it to be that way.
Yeah, but why for you though? Instead of generalizing, you've got your own sort of, mishigas, your own sort of thing. Why for you is that only good in theory?
Oh, because I have my own set of demons that are always, mentally knocking at my door, trying to, pull me back into the repeated patterns that have been, built up over the years.
With all due respect for privacy, what is a demon that you're still wrestling with in our work?
Uh, yeah, I would say it's the set of beliefs instilled with me by a certain family member from a young age in me that I was less than and that I wouldn't accomplish much of anything.
What was the word she used?
Uh,
I
Not
hate the
smart enough,
word. It was worse.
stupid.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. 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 I fucking hate that. Yeah. Stupid. So what happens to a young kid when they're told they're stupid?
they believe it.
Deeper. What's worse?
They identify with it. They take that on as their identity.
It's like a black cloak is put over the true self. It's like you can't find yourself. And my
Hmm.
job has always been, as much as I've tried and you've done beautifully with it, is to remove that cloak, and then the
Hmm.
light of the self, right? The true self is felt, it's experienced,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then what happens when you blinded by the light? Haha, blinded by the light. What happens then when you're blinded? What do you do then when suddenly all these years later you realize, oh shit, that was their shit, not my shit. I'm not stupid. That's what they thought about themselves. Had nothing to do with me. Then what do you do with this newfound awareness that you're going to fight me on this, but it's okay, that you're brilliant.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah. In this context, I won't fight you on that too much. But but yeah, I think it's just finding, it's like taking a breath of air for the first time after being underwater for,
Mm,
you know, way too long, and just coming up for that first breath of air and, feeling the rush of life inside of you and feeling like you have this enormous well of energy. And I think it really just comes down to, you know, this awakening of like, okay, well, what do I do with all this energy?
mhm.
And
What do
you
you
figure,
what is one thing you do that no one would probably suspect about you?
uh, I go and climb mountains for fun.
For
Yeah,
fun. Uh,
yeah.
like not like you literally like what was the last mountain you climbed that you just went to recently?
I was on Denali in
Yeah.
Alaska. Yeah,
Yeah.
which
And what
was
was that like?
psychotic.
Why was it psychotic?
Because I was living on a glacier for 16 days, climbing up this
Mm.
hill in sometimes negative 40-degree weather, getting superficial frostbite on my fingers, and one of my toes, and being the most uh, uncomfortable I've ever been in my life. Uh, all in the name of reaching the top of a hill, even or a pretty big hill at that.
Remember what you told me about the last time you went to, when we met, we talked about how what happened when you went to the mountain before we met?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
remember what you said happened up there, the anticlimactic feeling?
yeah. It was the idea that when I would get to the top of the previous mountain before we met, that it would be this great spiritual awakening, and that I would, get there and just realize that, have some sort of epiphany, uh, and that didn't happen. Uh, and
Why?
so, uh, because I realized that, I'm trying to, climb an external mountain, but the real mountain, cornerly enough, that I have to summit and conquer is the one that's within me, and that's the constant goal, is to get to the top of that internal summit.
Talk about that. You've never said that. So the top of the internal summit. So why is it so hard to make that a real thing? Why is it fun to talk about, but why is it hard to feel?
Because it's a daily battle. It's not like you throw yourself into it. Like, yeah, 16 days was a lot to be on a mountain, but it it came and it ended. Uh, and I knew I was either going to get to the top or I wasn't. Thankfully, I got to the top. But after those 16 days, it was over, and I knew that going into the experience that it was going to be a finite amount of time. Whereas this internal mountain that we're talking about is indefinite. It's lifelong. It's an everyday thing.
What's the point of climbing a mountain? It's an everyday thing if you never get to the top. Like, why bother?
Well,
Why bother trying to go? If you can't ever get to the top and get into the summit, it's not the point. It's the climb. What's the why?
because it's there. It's something to strive for. Something
Yeah, I
to.
think it's got to be something more than that, though. Like the hopelessness and the apathy, which you're very familiar with, and so am I.
Mhm,
Right. So where does that wellspring, that excitement, that thing within us that causes us to say, but this day I'm going to do this, and this day I'm going to do this? It goes under the assumption that, my big famous, like, sort of Oprah like analogy that I always make, which is like, we live our life for the period, but the life is about the sentence.
mhm.
So we literally all live for the period, but then the minute a period comes at the end of a sentence, another sentence begins, but that's not how we live our life. We just want to get through the sentence of the period.
Yeah. Well,
Why?
yeah. Well, I would say people in general, we do that because we become identified with our egos. We're not necessarily concerned with present. The egos, our egoic selves are always in this state of wanting. Um, you know,
Talk about
the
your ego. Talk about your ego. Don't generalize. Make specific.
yeah, my ego, I think that was the realization we had, is that there's always going to be you know, let's use the example. There's always going to be a bigger mountain to climb. Uh, there's always going to be a taller mountain to climb, and the ego in me would be like, okay, cool, Denali, tallest mountain, and then in North America it was cool, but there are bigger mountains out there, and then just adding on, and it becomes this never-ending cycle of wanting, instead of just being happy with what's at hand in the present moment.
What party wants to climb a mountain? If we have to be happy with the present moment, everything's great the way it is. We don't have to. There's no attachment to any outcome. The striving and wanting, according to Buddhism, is the root of all suffering. Right? All those
Hmm.
ideas. Right? So then, what party wants to go on a friggin' mountain? What wants to work through you? There's a leading question for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the probably purest the purest part of me that wants to do that, to
What do-
experience
what do you call it?
self.
Sure, self, God, source, God, soul, whatever you want to call it. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
What are your thoughts? It's a big G word. No one likes to talk about it, but why not? Because that's what this point of this work is about, to just sort of say everything. What do you think about the word God, the idea, the concept of God? Because you know me, I'm a pastor with a constant crisis of faith. That's why I'm good at this, I think, because I just, you know, I understand what I understand, and then some days I don't, some days I do. Where are you with all that now?
Yeah, I feel like that word, you know, can be pretty sticky to a lot of people.
What about you? What
But
about you?
yeah, I do.
Honestly,
Yeah, I feel like that there is I believe that there is a higher power at play that we're all connected to, and
you
that we're
you
all.
said you said God a lot in our work. Do you subscribe to the idea of God?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. So are you reticent to tell anyone that?
Uh, yeah, I would.
Yeah,
Yes,
me too. Why?
because if I didn't, then that would be misleading and disingenuous to my own self. I would just essentially be editing myself,
Yeah.
for others' perceived lack of comfort, and
Hmm.
I feel like I've done that enough, earlier in my life, and I don't think sharing my belief in that should, be something that I should consider that might scare somebody.
What do you do if you've ever said that to someone, that you live your life, we talk about this, but there was a great person that we both like, Tasha Silver, and her work, it's not your money, where she talks about it's not your
Hmm.
money, it's God's money. So it's about God giving money to you. And then it takes the umbrage off of us, which is all the self-help stuff, which is that you got to think law of attraction, you got to crush, you got to have your vibration, you got to be in the vortex, all these things that people have talked about forever. But she
Yeah.
instead, so, from your understanding, what is her basic precept that you that you sent me pages of notes on? I
Uh,
made you. I made you.
yeah, yeah. It was good. It was a good exercise.
It was great. You did great. It was stellar work.
Thank you. I mean, yeah, I feel like, yeah, her basic precept is, once I release the idea of mine, that it's mine, and then just, transfer, basically just give it all up to God. You operate within the flow of how things are supposed to happen, and that, you can cast all your worries aside and cast these burdens to God, and, allow, God to provide for you.
You believe in that?
Yeah,
You do.
yeah, some
Why? Well,
combination of it.
yeah. Tell me your combination. Like, why do you? Because I go up and down on that. I always need proof. I need physical evidence. I mean, the fact I'm alive is physical evidence enough.
Right.
But uh, how do you move beyond doubt into faith then? That's true. So basically, you're saying there's not really anything I have to worry about because I take the best action I can, I do what I can, and God's going to provide. So, like she always says, divine beloved, change me into somebody who can trust that all my needs are always being met by you. So you're basically trusting, surrendering, letting go,
Mm-hmm.
doing all you can. Well, what happens when you're in a sticky situation where there's very little money, you don't see any opportunities? How do you have faith then?
Well, isn't that the basis of what faith is to stay the course when you're being challenged and being, put through trials and tribulations.
What happens though when you aren't so feeling so good about that and you get pissed off at God?
Well, it can make you move into a state of, lack, or, a
Or
mentality of
or
lack,
or what's rage? Also, you
or
know me with rage.
yeah, it can also spur you to take action and improve your situation, which you can attribute to God.
Yeah, what do you think about that whole thing with, spirituality and self-help? We talk about this a lot, the idea that we're, supposed to be these beings of light and love and compassion and kindness all the time, right?
I don't buy that.
Why?
I think
It sounds good though, doesn't it?
it does, and it sells.
And it
But
sells. Yeah. What does it sell?
yeah, I think,
Sells books. It sells courses.
It
just watch
does.
my
Sells
course and you'll,
retreats. Yeah, meditation.
yeah, which
Yeah,
is
you'll
not
be
bad.
good.
Let's not vilify those. Money through
Mm.
spirituality is a thing a lot of people struggle with, and many don't. But I think God's meant for us. God wants us to be rich. I don't believe that we're not supposed to be. What do you think about this idea? Someone said this to me recently. This is fascinating. I didn't think I would say this, but this is fascinating. She says to me that, reincarnation, which I've been playing with, right? And she wants to do a past
Hmm.
life thing with me. And she was saying to me, she was like, it could be in this life your karma is not to be wealthy. So despite all the books that say, make money, be wealthy, do this, do that, crush it, the money's coming, have faith, believe, all this. My karma in this lifetime may indicate that I am not meant to be wealthy because God has something else in store for me. But I don't know. I don't really buy that. Maybe it's because I don't want to buy that. Do you think there's some truth to that? Because I'm just barely touching my putting my feet in the pool of reincarnation. I understand karma, but I think we throw these terms around, don't what they mean. Do you think there's truth in that? That you can't will yourself
Uh,
into having money, but Tasha's model is the better one?
I think that I believe in the idea of reincarnation fascinates me.
Hmm.
And I think again, this is something that's, beyond what I can understand and see and perceive. But I feel like there's truth to that. Um, but at the same time, I don't know that I necessarily buy that, we're predisposed to this karmic lesson that we have to learn during this quote unquote lifetime on Earth. So
So, but
I don't necessarily buy the idea that, like you were saying, maybe you're not supposed to be wealthy in this lifetime. Um, I think that yeah, I think it's a bit more nuanced than that.
so you said you feel it, right? So a lot of this, lot of the stuff that we talk about as a way to work with a logical and a feeling state, and an emotional state where you sense in your gut and your instinct that this is the right way to go.
Hmm.
Um, so you said at the beginning, inner outer. So a lot of the work that we've done is sort of like going into the interior state and then living in the exterior world. How has that movement changed for you in our work? Like, how now do you find yourself going inside to hear, listen for the answers, and then live in the world from a different state? Has that altered for you at all, or how has that changed at all in terms of how you function in life and perceive things?
Yeah, I think I number one, uh, uh, more or less try to get myself into a state where I realize that the world is, marching to the beat of its own drum, regardless of what's going on inside my own head.
Mhm.
Um, so, the problems, basically like the idea that, your internal state can project upon the world. Like your world can be either like, a living heaven or a living hell, depending on um, what you project upon it based off your internals. And of course, yeah, things can happen to you externally that can impact that, but it's also, as far as what's under your control, it's that internal state, and you can make it, better or worse for yourself, and it's really up to you. So it's, for me, what's changed has really been, that daily habituation of, making sure I start the day in that state where, whatever happens, I'm more or less in this, more receptive, objective, and observational, state of self and consciousness, if you will, rather than this reactive, wrapped up in your own problems, sort of person.
What's the latter part of you? It's the word we would talk about it forever. What's the latter you identify as what when you're in the latter cranky, persnickety, annoyed, frustrated, even bitter, resentful, two of my favorite emotions in the world.
Hmm.
Like what are we identifying as when we feel those things?
The ego, the mind.
Yeah, ego, all that sort of stuff. So would you say that your ability to not let apathy or depression inside of you, which, like what's the point, that sort of feeling. So the habituation to find a way to connect to that interior state inside of you, do you think that was what helped you dislodge from that grip of that sort of stuff?
Yeah, yeah, like connecting to that higher self
Yeah,
versus
because you said to me when you go in the world and you're in a better mood, you perceive the world as a better place. But when you're in a terrible, apathetic, depressed state, when I've had those in my life in the past, nothing, I was very shook and nothing could get me out of that,
shake you.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing could get me out of it. So, how do you get out? How have you gotten out of that state when you get up, no matter what you do with your spiritual practice, you work, all the 3 million books that I throw at you and meditations and shit, me fucking texting you at like, 2 o'clock in the morning and getting you to do these things. What do you do if that doesn't get you move the needle in your emotional states when you go in the day? You're still thinking this world is not as great as everyone thinks it's cracked up to be, and it's kind of rough. And I really don't understand the point of this. What do you do when you're in that state?
I think that's a really good question. You because usually it's talking to you, and then snaps me out of it. But again, yeah, from personal perspective, I think trying to remember and remind
But it's
myself
but it's
that
I'm gonna be annoying and interrupt, but it's not about me. Like,
no,
what is my presence in your life helping you do? Because it's not me doing it. My ego would love to say, yes, look at me, aren't I wonderful? No, I am wonderful. But um, what is it in our interaction, just even in text? Because I'm very big into texting in between sessions. What is it about that text that jostles inside you? What happens inside of you?
it puts me into raw presence
Why? Why did a text do that?
because it's the way we've always interacted,
Which
and
is,
it's in this manner that deals with taking inventory of what's happening internally at any given moment and being able to address that and recognize that for what it is rather than focusing on this thing down the line or that thing down the line.
this is our relationship, right? So our relationship here. So in the newsletter that I sent out today about clearing and stuff,
Hmm.
this relationship sparks in you this visceral emotional understanding of yourself. It wakes you up out of the illusion that these
Hmm.
externals, are going to bring you things, even though they make it much more fun and enjoyable. And it's wonderful to have these cars and money. It's wonderful. We all want it, and we all
Right.
deserve it. But when it's not either there or it's there, we don't feel it. What is about the relationship, our relationship here? Obi-Wan asks Luke, what is it about our relationship that jostles you out of it? It's based, it's the newsletter when I wrote about this, about clearing away, choosing who's around you. Why does this relationship help jostle you out of that? Remind you back into the truth.
Because I think our relationship is one that uplifts each other, not focused on you know what's wrong with something like a lot of other relationships I have with other people, like friends, family, whatever, that somebody's always unhappy with the current state, and that really is quite draining on me, to be honest with you, and drags me down. Whereas I think what you've instilled in me is that just existing in this state of I already have it all. The Mark 11:24 um, idea, and just that really, I think most of our conversations and interactions lend ourselves to going back to that point, which jostles me out of it.
So be a show off because you were a show off early on. You'd memorize shit. So be a show off and tell me what you do this constantly. You'd memorize. I was like, so what's Mark 11:24? You got it
uh,
verbatim.
yeah, yeah. Therefore, I say to you, uh, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it shall be yours. Something along those
So
lines.
along those lines. It's like verbatim. Okay, so that's so Mark 11:24.
Hmm.
So that expression, what is it saying in terms of the understanding of how to access the emotional state inside of you?
That we need to understand that you know exist in that state of you already have what it is that you want, and it's like
Yes.
this self-fulfilling thing that if you can live there and believe that you live there, and exist there, then uh, the externals will eventually be reflected of that.
So slow your roll and let's break it down. So Mark 11:24 says, therefore, say it again.
Therefore, I say to you,
I say to you, meaning God, yes, keep
mhm,
going.
whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it shall be yours.
So whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that in the moment that you ask for in prayer, you receive it and you shall have it. So
Hmm.
cause and effect, right?
Hmm.
So the feeling you're trying to feel when you're in a depressed or apathetic state, what is the feeling you want to feel?
Ease, joy, elation.
Yeah. So if you ask for God to give to you something that you feel you don't have, what does God actually do in that moment?
Gives it to you.
And your relationship with God reminds you that you already have it.
Hmm.
So God's not really giving you anything, but in that relationship, it's about the relationship with God, relationship with source, relationship with self. See,
Hmm.
our relationship is just a marker. It is a,
Reflection.
yeah, of what you are, of helping you to relate to yourself.
Yeah.
And I'm here to help you learn to relate to yourself and then trust by making God the figure of that to then know that if you ask for it, then in that moment it turns and you receive it. So you feel an uplift. So you feel less
Apathetic, depressed, etc.
and, and like you feel less like because in a relationship with someone, when you're working with someone, you feel less. Look at how leading, how this is not a remotely obvious. You feel less, which is the big thing about depression and apathy. We feel so like
Uh,
like alone.
yeah. Yeah.
Isn't that what all of us, isn't that what we're all going through? We feel this like no one sees us, no one understands us, and we feel alone.
Yeah.
Did you ever feel that I ever felt that I didn't experience and haven't and will continue to and do even to this day some of the darker feelings that you feel?
No, you've never put forth something. You're saying that you've never.
Yeah, I did a wormhole there. I always do that because I talk
Yeah,
a lot.
yeah, yeah, you haven't
Yeah,
you
yeah,
haven't pulled any punches about that. You deal with those same emotions.
yeah. Do you what do you think about a healer, a person like me that is called to this work? Do you think I should have it all together and not feel these things? This is very leading because I get this a lot from a lot of people.
No, I don't.
Yeah. Why?
You're human. We're human. We're we're supposed to, you know, we're supposed to experience those emotions. It's a part of the human condition.
So the fallacy, right? The idea that our well, why do you think it is? And this is a little rhetorical, but I'm curious. Society always says, "Be authentic, be yourself. Don't hide your scars, your warts." But then, so much of society is like perfect, right? Everything's just perfect and together, right?
Yeah.
What is the message? Because I know you're not a social media guy, but what is the message that you think that says to us? That duplicitous message: be authentic, but then also be perfect and showing yourself to the world.
Yeah, I think that is duplicitous because then it just reinforces this. I think, you know, when people see that perfection or perceived perfection being put forth in the world, just causes them to feel worse about themselves. And then, uh, instead of being uplifting, it just drags them down.
Yeah, but why? Go a little deeper because that. I mean, yes, but why though? Like, I really want your perspective. I have, God knows, I could go on for days about it, but why does that happen? Why do we feel like shit and doom scroll? Well, we literally know when that camera turns off, a million other things they would never show on camera are happening. Everybody says, "Oh, be mysterious," and Tina Fey says, "Authenticity has a price," and we're all like in this really weird place where nothing's authentic because everyone says you can't be. You know, how do you be authentic in a world that demands that you not be authentic? That says, "I want you to be authentic," but they're really not saying be authentic.
I think it's hard. I think it's really difficult to do that. I think, we live in a world where people edit themselves for other people.
What do you
And
think about people that say you have to edit yourself for their comfort because you're too much?
I think that's bullshit.
So how do we live in a world where people need that? They need you to act away because that's what they need, particularly if they're in power, particularly if they're like in a position where, because I've been told that a lot in my life endlessly, and I'm always intrigued with people's perspective of that. Because a lot of new thought leaders are always saying, you can't live in the real world like there's one person, I won't name them, but they have a huge library of books about power and about how you have to seduce and manipulate, and you can't usurp the king or queen and all these things, right?
Mhm.
How do you live in that world when you're somebody who wants to be authentic, but you got to play these games to get ahead?
It's a really good question. I think it's pretty hard to come up with a cut and dry answer to that. I think that there's an aspect of it where, you do have to taper or, you know, I guess sand the edges a bit in what you're putting forth in the world. But I think like you can't
And
do
how
that at the
how are you going to be yourself like that and not let it affect you other people's opinions and thoughts? You, Jamie, what is it you can remember? We've talked about this before. It's a huge saving grace. Everyone fights me on it. I fight myself on it. Do you remember what we said about this? How you, Jamie, can go out there and express your truth. We love to say that. Tell your truth.
Yeah, live your truth.
Even that's become a fucking t-shirt. But yeah, what is that? So how do you do that and then not let the inherent slings and arrows of other people who are their duplicitous says be yourself, but be this version of yourself so I'm comfortable with my choices. Right.
Hmm.
What do you have to remember when people do that against you? 'Cause it is
That
against
they're
you.
just that they're just projecting what they want, um, for me onto me, and that they're also just projecting, how they view themselves onto me.
So it's all about them, which means
Right. That it doesn't matter.
no,
And
keep going. Say it, say it, say it, say it.
uh, that's all bullshit. And
It's never personal.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Do you believe that?
yeah, I do. I do.
Yeah.
It was kind of like a bit of a brain pretzel when you first presented me with that, but then as I,
Same here.
ruminated on it a lot longer and then started being cognizant of it and, especially with interactions with others, I think, I come to the fact that it is absolutely true.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is so true. And I hear people fight me about that left and right when they get mad at me, when I see people get mad at someone else, when they lose their mind, where they just
Hmm.
rant and rave. It's never personal, someone's very
Hmm.
strong reaction to us. But why is it that we would modulate our behavior and how we communicate? If we know it's not personal, why would we still do what they ask us to do? Change the way we behave, question who we are.
Because it's easier to do that.
Is it?
Yeah, from a conditioning standpoint,
So what happens to our perspective of ourselves when we do that?
it becomes muddied, changes.
So it's just all a big game, isn't it?
Yeah,
Just a game.
yeah.
The question I think that we do have to ask, and I say this to people a lot myself, is that situation, that person, that moment going to offer me something that is seismic enough, insightful enough to where I'm willing to play this
Compromise.
game?
Yeah.
Because you do. life is about people want you to compromise, they want you to edit yourself, they demand it. Otherwise, they ghost you. So you have to do that. So how do you do
Hmm.
that and not lose love of self? How do you do that? Coming up with all these projects we've been talking about that you're building, special things we're building together.
It's hard. You have to keep up appearances in certain regards.
But how do you really feel inside when that happens?
Feel like you're compromising on your integrity, but
How do you really feel inside?
a little angry, a little pissed
A
off,
little,
a little
little.
rage. Yeah,
Yeah, and today we don't want rage, right?
right.
So what do you, Jamie, do with that rage, which is understandable that you feel inside?
Uh, do what all good Irishmen do. You just sweep it under the rug and bottle it up until it explodes.
And what does our favorite David Hawkins, what does he say in that book, which we both love, which I will recommend to the day I die, I swear. What does he say we do with that emotion? But
You
tell me the process. Yeah, go slow, go do it slow and do the process, and then we'll wrap 'cause it's already been an hour.
Yeah, you recognize that you're feeling or experiencing the emotion. Uh, you recognize it, you let it move through you, and then you just surrender to that emotion and you just let it go.
Do you judge the emotion when you're feeling it?
Nope. You don't look at it as good, bad, whatever. It's just an emotion.
And is it good to be feeling all these emotions inside of us?
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes us human.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you feel about this, but I find it challenging in the world of spirituality and metaphysical and spiritual and mystical when everything it just says good vibes only, purely positive.
Uh, it's bullshit.
I think toxic positivity is reaching a pinnacle.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this adamant thing that you're actually fucking up if you're not toxically positive all the time about
Yeah.
everything. Why does that strike you as shallow?
Why does it strike us as shallow? That strike me as
You.
shallow.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's I think it ignores I think you used the perfect word for it, shallow, right? Like it ignores the complexity of us. Like this being positive all the time is, I don't know, like it's the the yin and the yang. Without the good emotions, there's no dark. Without the dark, there's no light. And if we're only focusing on the positive, then we're really neglecting this whole other half of our depth and breadth of just spirit. So you can't just toss the perceived negative emotions out of the way.
Yeah, we've always talked about this, but it's very funny how it's like we almost don't want to know that there's been, years that so many years of philosophy, art, philosophical
Hmm.
thought, psychoanalytic thought, talking about the multiple myriad sort of ways in which human beings are created and function. We just want to reduce it to good vibes only.
Right.
Yeah. So we'll wrap it up here, but I do have to ask, why do you think you are so like why did you agree to talk with me here on something's going to be on the internet? Why did you agree? Why are you so intrigued with this work? Why are you so like a dog with a bone? Like why like you're a rare case. You're not even 30 and you have the ravenous intellect of somebody in their late 40s. So what is it? Why? Because you really have taken to the work like a what is it? Fish to water, duck to water, fish to water. Yeah,
Fish to water. Yeah.
fish to
I appreciate you
water.
saying that. Uh, yeah, I think it's just this idea of just everybody being connected. Um, you know, the collective human consciousness. Contributing to something greater. It's something that I haven't been able to shake since from a young age, and
Really, I didn't know
yeah,
that.
yeah. I just feel like there's something more to be uncovered out there, and this work really allows me to dig in to know myself better and by that, kind of uncovering those secrets, those truths, whatever you want to call them.
What's your favorite book that you've read that we've worked on?
Um, Untethered Soul,
Why do you like
by
that so much?
because it's effective, it's to
Yeah.
the point, and it talks about the clear delineation of consciousness versus the mind and the ego, and how to operate from a sense of the mind and just being able to really experience freedom for the first time.
Oh, I'd forgotten about that. I came up with me recently with somebody. What is freedom? Hmm.
It's it's what's on the other side of pain and discomfort.
What's Mark 11:24?
Believe that you have already received it and it shall be yours.
Are you already free?
Yeah,
What happens when you don't remember that?
you get identified with the ego, the mind's thoughts, and you go back into your rabbit hole.
When the rabbit comes out of the rabbit hole, sees the light of day,
Hmm.
feels free. What's the feeling of freedom for you?
Being on top of that mountain.
Can you be there anytime?
Yeah,
So why go to the mountain?
don't have to,
Or why do you want to?
because I'm an adrenaline junkie and like doing that shit.
And if someone met you and heard the conversation, would they presuppose the way in which you talk and engage that you're an adrenaline junkie?
No, definitely not.
So what does that tell you about the human condition?
That it's an extremely complex and beautiful, amazing thing.
Yes, which is what we've always talked about. That's why I lose my mind, thankfully, about this reductive sort of view and this it just worked. We are
Yeah,
so intricate
yeah, absolutely are.
to be able to reduce us down to a one note. It's like going to a symphony and saying, "Oh, you know what? I don't need all that. I just want the triangle. Just the
Yep.
triangle. Just hit that triangle a lot. That's my jam, baby. Go ahead." Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. It's ridiculous. You can't be done. We're so much more than that.
So why do we keep doing that right now? Why is there this resistance to accepting the complexities? And yes, I will go. I'm always chatty. Why?
Why is there a resistance to accepting the complexities?
Yeah, or there's a scripting now happening. There's a certain way you have to talk about it. Everyone talks about their trauma and space. And I understand it's a way to sort of make sense of things. But why does it feel like it's managed now and careful and not really a little dangerous and a little edgy and a little out there? Why is it so just sort of either
Sterile.
or guys yelling at you about being disciplined or people yelling at you about being compassionate and kind? It's like you think there's polarization in political arenas in the country. There's polarization in spiritual community.
Yeah, I mean, because I think it's easier for them to take this all or nothing view of things,
Why?
where because it sells, number one.
I think it sells because people want easy answers, but there's the easy answer is what?
There's no one size fits all, and that there's a balance to it, and each day each day you could have a good day, you could have a bad day, and within each good day and one bad day and a good bad day, you can have good moments, bad moments, etc. It's just this, it's forever this, rising tide and lowering of the tide, and it's not good or bad. It's just this. It's part of the human experience, and it's to go with this idea that you have to be positive all the time, or that you have to exercise this level of discipline. I think just goes against that.
It actually causes it to feel worse
Yeah,
because we end up shaming ourselves, saying we're doing something wrong.
yeah,
When all we have to do is speak kindly to ourselves and say, "Okay, now it's my job to do the best I can to get back on the top of the mountain.
yep,
And if I
agreed.
don't get there, that's okay for today."
Yep.
It's probably not a good day to drive in rush hour if you can avoid it.
Exactly.
But you're not the top of the mountain, especially in Los Angeles. Probably not a good idea.
Definitely not.
Is there anything else you want to, I mean, anything else you want to add for anybody who's watching this or listening to this? I mean, I know that if there's anything that God wants us to do, the universe wants us to do, it's to help other people feel less alone or isolated, and perhaps put words to things they don't understand so they know that there's a reason why they question things quite a bit. Anything you want to add to anybody in the world? If there's ever a seed anybody in the world, which we hope.
Yeah, I just think goes to the idea that you're just really loving all parts of yourself, and you know finding the beauty in the parts that we think are ugly, and really embracing them, not just
Mhm.
acknowledging them, and allowing that to instead of being an inhibitor of what we perceive to be as progress, is allowing that to empower us to take action to move our life in the direction that we feel that we want for ourselves, and just knowing that it's not this easy straightforward thing, and that it's a the constant up and down, and it's just not this all in, all or nothing thing. It's okay that it's going to be hard, and it's okay that you know you stumble, because everybody stumbles. We're all human, and there's a certain beauty in that.
Are you okay with that being life,
Yeah, yeah,
even when you feel like you're in Groundhog's Day,
yeah.
especially when you're in Groundhog's Day?
Especially.
So you get back on the mountain,
Yep.
you find that feeling,
Yep.
or you do something that helps you to find the feeling. Music,
Hmm.
exercise. We talked about this a lot. Taking a walk,
Hmm.
reading something, engaging, going, seeing people, going to an event, working on a
Hmm.
project, creating something. But that state, faith is knowing that that state is available inside of you.
Hmm.
That emotional state is there.
Hmm.
And I think Jim Carrey once said, you got to give yourself a fighting chance. You got to give yourself a
Hmm.
fighting chance. And I think it's knowing what we do that stops us from finding that state. Knowing our secret little habits, our secret little things we do, the ways that we listen to our mind thinks that causes us to forget that.
Yeah,
Mm,
absolutely.
mm. This is the course hour 15. Shocker. I said 30 minutes. Look at me. What a shocker. I was bored talking. Okay. Well, thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, Michael.
All right. I'll
Great
talk to you
being here.
soon. Yeah.
Talk to you.
Yeah. I got to tell, I mean, I got to say this because it's just got to say it. I'd probably edit this out, but I don't know. Thank you very much for your willingness to share yourself in this work.
Happy to do it.
I want a lot of people to hear you, and I want a lot of people, hopefully, to hear what you have to say, and hopefully it'll move them in some way. We have no control over that, as you and I both know, all
No, we
people.
don't.
We
Yeah, we
really
don't.
don't.
But
It's not up
happy to
to
be
us.
a happy to be a part of this, and thank you for seriously, from the bottom of my heart, for you know doing what you've done for me, and for allowing me to be a part of this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. I'll be in touch about our next meeting.
Sounds good. Talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye, brother.
Bye.
Bye.